One of the most common questions that I get asked is, how long is all of this going to take? If you're wondering the same thing, then you're in the right place. Today, we are going to walk through a typical home buying timeline from start to finish. I'm also going to talk about a few things that you can do to speed up the process or slow it down. And we're also going to talk about how I can help you navigate this process smoothly. Let's dive in. If this is your first time visiting the channel, and if you want to know everything there is about the Houston market and Houston's best real estate, then subscribe below and tap the bell. That way you'll be among the first to know about the Houston market and Houston's best real estate. And by the way, my name's Michael Hughes. I'm a Texas real estate broker and a Texas real estate attorney of more than 20 years. And along with my wife and business partner, Carol Hughes, we help folks just like you buy and sell Houston's best real estate. Now, no two home transactions are the same, so I can't give you an actual guarantee as to the exact number of days that it's going to take to get your home purchase done. But a good rule of thumb is 30 to 60 days after the purchase contract is signed. Now, sometimes it can take less time than that, especially if you're paying cash for the property, and sometimes it can take a little bit longer than that. But it's a good rule of thumb, a good amount of time to plan for, 30 to 60 days after the purchase contract is signed. Now, the journey getting to actually signing the purchase contract, well, that can vary depending on some circumstances, some of which are within your control as the buyer and some of which really aren't. But as a general rule, from the time that you first look at that first house online until we're sitting at the closing table and I can finally hand you the keys to your new home, you can expect that process to take anywhere from several weeks all the way to several months. Let's drill down a little bit deeper and take a look at some of the factors that can affect how long the home buying process takes. As we said earlier, some of these are going to be within your control as the buyer, and some of these are going to be completely out of your hands. First up, market conditions. And here, right off the bat, is a factor that is completely out of your control as the buyer. When we say market conditions, what we mean is the comparison between the current demand for homes, how many people are out there wanting to buy right now, versus the number of homes on the market, how many homes are available to be purchased. If the demand for homes is very high and there's not enough available homes to go around, then prices are going to go up and the competition for those available homes is going to get much more intense. We call that situation a seller's market. Now, in a seller's market, homes are going to be moving off the market very fast. And oftentimes buyers will find themselves in bidding situations where they're bidding against other buyers in multiple offer scenarios. This can result in a longer timeline for you, the buyer, as you run into situations where, for example, you put an offer in on a property only to get outbid by someone else, or that particular property moved off the market and went under contract so quickly that we never even got the chance to present our offer to the listing agent. When that happens, typically what we have to do is scratch that home off of our list, go back to the beginning, and start over with the next home on the list. Now, the opposite side of that coin is something called a buyer's market, and this is something that we really haven't seen in Houston in a very long time. In a buyer's market, the number of available homes is more than the number of buyers who are actually out there wanting to purchase. That leads to home prices falling and the sellers competing amongst each other to offer incentives or to make their homes more attractive to the limited number of buyers who are available. Now, this is a wonderful situation if you're a buyer, but as I said, we haven't seen a buyer's market in Houston for quite some time. Now, the second factor that influences how long the home buying process takes is loan approval. And here is a place where you as the buyer can have a direct impact on speeding up this process. There are actually two aspects to loan approval. One of them is the pre-approval process, and the second one is final approval, or the underwriting process that happens after the purchase contract is signed. Pre-approval is the single most important step that a buyer can take that will speed up the home buying process. Before we even tour the very first home with me as your agent, I will recommend to you that you get in touch with a lender to get the pre-approval process taken care of. Once we have located a suitable local lender, that lender is going to ask you to provide some documentation, pay stubs, tax returns, bank statements, credit reports, and some others. They're going to use that documentation to perform a preliminary review, and from that, they're going to calculate how much of a loan you can actually afford, what the payment would be, what the interest rate will be, and a few other things like that. Once that process is complete, the lender is going to provide you a pre-approval letter. And having that letter is your golden ticket to speeding up this process. Because anytime you submit an offer on a property, in most cases, the seller is going to want to see that pre-approval letter, which indicates to them that you as a buyer are serious about the home buying process because you have already started down the road to a final approval. You're already engaged with a lender and you're already actively participating in the process. The pre-approval process is usually very, very quick once you provide all of the necessary documentation to the lender. The second part of the loan approval process is the underwriting process, or working towards getting a final approval for the loan. This process is more complicated than the pre-approval process, but it largely happens behind the scenes. It's out of the buyer's sight. You don't see much of this unless there's a request for more documentation or something like that. The lender has already taken a preliminary look at you, the buyer, your finances, credit history, income, all of that type of thing. And they've already made a preliminary determination of how much loan your budget can support, what's the payment, what's the interest rate. Now, in the underwriting process, they're going to dig much deeper, and they're looking to verify all of the information that was provided previously. In addition, the underwriter is also going to be taking a look at the property itself. They want to know that the property is actually worth the amount of money that they are being asked to loan the buyer in order to purchase it. So they're looking at collateral here. Is the collateral worth the amount of the loan? And to do that, they're going to be looking at a few things. They're going to be looking at the results of a title search. They're going to be looking at the appraisal report and a few other documents. The underwriting process typically takes anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks once the purchase contract is signed. So it's really important for you as the buyer to stay in contact with your lender and with your real estate agent so that we can promptly address any issues that may come up, or if there are any requests for additional documentation. The third factor that can impact how long the home buying process takes deals with the home inspection and the appraisal. Let's start with the home inspection. The home inspection takes place very, very early in the process, immediately after the purchase contract is signed, and it will usually be coordinated by your real estate agent. The buyer will pay for the services of a state licensed home inspector who will perform an examination of the property and provide a detailed report of any deficiencies based on a statewide standard. This is the primary way that the buyer will have access to a third party's professional opinion on the condition of the home that they just signed a contract to purchase. If the inspection uncovers major deficiencies on the property, then the buyer and the seller can negotiate a reasonable solution as to how those deficiencies are going to be addressed. And there may be an amendment to the purchase contract to record their agreement regarding how those deficiencies will be addressed. On the other hand, if the buyer and the seller cannot come to an agreement about the deficiencies or the repairs, then in most cases, the purchase contract will contain a provision that will allow the buyer to terminate the contract. Now, that does a few things, but in terms of the timeline, it's going to end that home buying timeline, and the buyer and their agent will go back to the beginning and start over with a new home. Okay, so now what about the appraisal? An appraisal is a separate report that is prepared by a state licensed inspector that is authorized to provide an exact dollar and cents value for the home. Now, the lender is going to be very interested in the results of the appraisal. They're going to want to see the appraisal report. And here's why. If the appraised value comes in higher than the contract purchase price, then the house is worth more than the amount of the loan. That means that the lender has secure collateral and the lender is happy. On the other hand, if the appraisal report shows a value that is less than the contract purchase price, then the property is not worth the amount of the loan that the lender is being asked to make. And in that case, the lender is not happy. In most cases, most lenders will not close a loan if the value of the property is not at least as much or more than the contract purchase price. Now, if that happens, the parties have the opportunity to renegotiate the purchase terms and come to a new sales arrangement for the property that will make the lender happy, and the lender can then see their way through to closing on the loan. But if the parties cannot come to that agreement, in most cases, the purchase contract is going to have a provision that will allow the buyer to terminate the contract under those specific circumstances. And in that case, the buyer's home buying timeline for that property ends, and the buyer goes back to the beginning and starts over with a different property. Now, despite all of this, and no matter how hard we try, sometimes things are going to happen and there will be some snags or some delays in the process. Let's talk about some ways that we can minimize these delays and how we should go about responding to them. First thing, don't panic. Most of the time, delays are just inconveniences that can be quickly resolved. I, as your agent, will be working with the seller's agent and the other professionals in the transaction, the lender, the title agent, the escrow officer, and we're all going to be working to get these delays resolved as quickly as possible so that we can keep the transaction moving towards the closing day. Second thing, stay organized and responsive. In some cases, delays are caused by missing paperwork or perhaps incomplete responses to the lender or to the title agent. And when that happens, if you as the buyer remain organized, flexible, if we can provide prompt responses to any additional requests for documentation or things like that, we can prevent these minor delays from becoming drawn out, lengthy delays in the process. Number 3, remain flexible and keep an open mind. Understand that in this process that has a lot of moving parts, sometimes no matter how hard anyone tries, there are going to be delays. Bear that in mind when you are making your plans for things like movers or switching utility companies or things along that line. Remain flexible, keep an open mind, and plan for there to possibly be a delay in the process. And finally, it is important to minimize the chances for delay right off the bat by working with knowledgeable, experienced professionals in your home buying process. A knowledgeable real estate agent, lender, and home inspector can help you avoid the most common pitfalls in this process. At the end of the day, the ultimate goal is for us to get you the keys to your new home as smoothly and efficiently as possible. With the right preparation and with me at your side as your agent, we can make your home buying process smooth, efficient, and not stressful. Now, whether you are ready to start your next home buying journey next week, next month, or even next year, Carol and I would love to help make your next home purchase smooth and worry-free. So click on the link below to set up a free one-on-one Zoom consultation. Or, of course, you can always give me a call, shoot me a text, or send me an email. We are never too busy to hear from you, and we are looking forward to helping you buy or sell Houston's best real estate.